Hello, I'm Manuel and welcome to a new episode on how to become a digital nomad. Today we will be talking about transportation, or how do you go from one place to another, which is basically how do you go from your room to the place that you want to visit, or how do you go from one city to another city. And in the end you will find this weird relationship between distance, time and money. So the reason that I'm talking about this argument is because it's usually misunderstood. There is usually an overwhelming feeling of, I have to plan everything whenever I have to go or whenever I want to visit this place. And if you're in this sort of lifestyle, as a digital nomad, you don't really want to be stressed at all times because you're basically traveling all the time. You want to be and feeling relaxed. And reality is you don't have to plan much. There are just actually very few things that you have to plan. All the rest you can easily come up with it on the spot. But let's do one thing at a time. So let's start with what are the type of transportation that there are. So there are, let's just go through them. So you can walk, you can cycle, you can use the scooter, you can use a car, you can use your own camper if you have. Then there are buses, boats, trains, and airplanes. And the thing is that you have this sort of ways to move from one place to another, but you have to start to categorize them to understand which one you prefer to use them, which one you prefer to use. So let's try to categorize them, right? So how do you do that? So there are different ways. You can categorize them depending on how easy or how you find them. So you can find them on Google or on the desk or even in the airport sometimes. If they are private or public, how much money do they cost, how you book them, you have to rent or you have to buy a ticket, how easy is to plan them. You have to plan them, you can plan them the day before, the weeks before, you can plan it on the spot. What are the distance that they can go across, and also how much energy, physical energy you have to use, how tolling they are on your body. So these are the ways that you can, these are some of the ways that you can categorize them. And you can think which one you prefer to use whenever you move. So let's try to categorize a couple of them. For example, how would you categorize walking? So walking, you don't have to spend any money for it. The only thing that you have to find is the place that you want to reach, and you usually use Google Maps and then the location, and you just walk there. Walking is good for short distances, and it can be very physically tolling on your body. So you have to use a lot of energies, depending how long is the distance, obviously. And you don't have to book, and you don't have to plan at all. You just go out of the door and just walk. And it's the most private type of transportation that you can think of. Now let's consider another case, train. Train is a public type of transportation. You find it just by looking at Google, or you can sometimes ask at the desk of your hotel or the hostel, or even at the airport. If you arrive to an airport and you want to go to the city center, there is usually a train. It's a public type of transportation. It can be a little bit more expensive than other type of transportation. Booking depends how often there is the train. So it can be easy or it can be a little bit harder to plan for it. Booking, you usually have to buy a ticket, and it's good for medium to long distances. And it's usually not physically tolling because you just have to go to the train station, or you just have, you are at the airport, you just sit on the train and just wait for it to go. And that's it. You don't have to use much energy. So what I suggest you is to try to categorize them in your own ways. How would you think about airplane? How would you categorize them in these ways? And then whenever you have to make a choice, just think about the categories and how would you prioritize them. So you don't care about money, okay, then let's just always use any sort of private type of transportation, and that just always go around by car. It's a way. Now, starting from what I said before, let's actually consider the actually two ways of transportation that you will ever have to solve. How do you go from your room to a place that you want to visit, and how do you go from a city to another? So let's start from how do you go from your room to a place that you want to visit. So if you're renting something, use it. So you can, if you have a bicycle, a motorbike, or a car, or your own camper, you might use the thing that you have rented. Otherwise, if you want to go with some public type of transportation, if it is not so distant, you can go by walking, that's fine. Otherwise, you can use a bus or a train. And then you just think about how much money you want to spend, and that's it. You don't really have to, whenever you think about going from your room to a place that you want to visit, you don't have to think about anything. The planning is usually very easy. So the only thing that you might want to think about is probably at what time you have to wake up in order for you to get a bus to get to the place that you want to visit. And well, usually you come up with that the night before, and that's it. If you don't really care about it, you just wake up and then decide where you want to go, and then you find out how you get there, and that's basically it. You never really have to plan before and for places that you want to visit. Now, there are specific cases where you have to plan it, but 99% of the times you don't, believe me. So now let's consider the other case. What about going from one city to another? So the type of transportation that you would want to use really depends on the distance. So if you have rented a car or you have your own camper, you can go driving basically. But usually we are talking about cities in the same country or, in some sort of driving distance. If you're thinking about from one country to a country in another, the other part of the ocean, you're probably thinking about taking an airplane. If you are really crazy, you can even think about boats. Why not? So the type of transportation, public transportation to be used, you can also think about trains, depends on how long is the distance and how much money and what you can use. And usually you don't have to you don't have to plan that much about it. So if you are going from two close cities, you can easily go to the train station and just take the first train. If instead you have to take a plane, well, in that case you probably have already booked it. You have to book it already a week or weeks before. It depends really on the case. So let me try to wrap everything up. Transportation, as I said at the beginning, it's misunderstood. You don't have to really plan much. So usually the only thing that you have to plan is when you have to take an airplane, or in specific cases that you have to take a train. And whenever you have this sort of plan, what I suggest is basically take a piece of paper and write down how would you get there, and just write down a couple of cases. The first case is, okay, I wake up earlier, I take the earlier bus, and I arrive earlier to the airport. And then you have the second case of what happens if I miss the first bus. And well, that case you go for plan B, and you just still arrive in time, and that's it. Because as soon as you arrive to the airport, you just take the plane, you arrive to the destination, the airport of your destination city, and once you're there you don't really care, because you just have to ask to the desk and then you'll find eventually how you arrive to the hotel. It is usually not a big deal. So even in this case, whenever you have to plan, it's usually just how you get to the airport, and that's it. You don't have to think about much. So in a more generic way, the last thing that I leave to you is basically whenever you go from one place to another and you have to come up with some sort of transportation or method of transportation that you want to use, just go through the list and just go from just pick the one that you prefer, and that's it. That's basically it. And if you have to plan it, just do it and just write it down in a piece of paper and you're done. For all the others, don't plan for it, except for very specific cases where you have to, because the seats are extremely limited. So with this, that's what I wanted to talk about. If you like this video, please smash the like button. It really helps me out a lot. This video will get suggested to others if it gets likes. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments down below. I will have fun to reply to them. If you like the content, just subscribe and you'll just get notified, hopefully. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it, and see you next time. Bye.